Having a good start to the week after an enjoyable weekend. This weekend was WPI's homecoming weekend, and I had the chance to see somebody very special. Patrick, I have a question for you.
What's that chance?
Is this the Krusty Krab?
No, this is Patrick.
Also today, I have another interview, and I hope you enjoy it. On Underleveled. I am in Worcester Polytechnic Institute's Curation, Preservation, and Archives. And full disclosure, I do work here. It is a very enjoyable place to be, especially as one that appreciates WPI's long and rich history. And I'm happy to be sitting down with Michael Kemezis, who is an archivist here in CPA. If we could start with a little bit of your background.
Yep.
Entering the field of being an archivist and then coming to WPI.
Yeah, so I went to Holy Cross for my undergrad down the street. I got my degree in history and kind of decided my senior year of college, wondering what I wanted to do with that, because I didn't want to teach, because I'd seen that and I didn't want to go into law. So I pretty much Googled what can you do with a history degree, and archivist popped up. And the more I read about it, the more I figured that's what I want to do, because you actually work with the history, the primary documents, primary sources, and you get to learn some cool stuff. So I interned at Holy Cross my senior year in the archives for Mark Savolis, who's still there. He's known. He's a great guy. He's been at Holy Cross forever. And I really liked it, so I decided to go to library school. That's how you get your archives degree. So I went to get my master's in library science back where I'm from, in right outside New York City. And then after I graduated, I worked 4 or 5 part-time jobs in different kind of archival, library, records management positions in and around the tri-state area. And then I was working in a completely different field, legal publishing, for about 1.5 years. And when I saw this job posting to come back to work in Worcester, and I read it, and it's exactly what I wanted to do. So I handle all the public-facing aspects of the department. So I applied, came for the interview, and the rest is history. That's how I ended up here. But I knew the second I applied for this job that I was like, this is for me, and it's worked out great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, the field of archiving, curation, preservation, and archiving is one that I didn't know a lot about coming in, but is incredibly necessary for large organizations that have history, such as universities or museums. And talk a little bit about what an archivist does.
Okay, so that's also, there's many answers to that question, as you probably have learned and found out here. There's what I do. And for more classical terms, a reference archivist. So I'm somebody that you contact if you find out we have a collection for your research. I'm the person that you would contact, and I would set up your research appointment. That's anything from getting you a parking pass, getting you internet, kind of logistical things, to kind of finding out what collections you're interested in and kind of finding out what your actual question is. Some people might come in with one question. I want to learn all about this. And I would sit down with that person and say, okay, what are you really trying to find? What is the actual question you're trying to answer? And based on that conversation, with the knowledge of the collections that we have here, I'll point you in a direction to go. Usually I don't find the answers for you unless you're the president's office and you call looking for a specific answer or things like that. But I'm here to help you with your research because I know the collections. I know what we have. So we have students that come in all the time that say, I want to learn about the plan, the WPI plan, and that's what you guys, in your undergrad, that's what you do now. And that was a huge process. That took at least 6 or 7 years to implement. So what aspect of the plan do you want to learn about? So we have those conversations and you find out it's for a class and they just want to know how it started and who wrote it. And then I send them on their way. I'm like, here, look here. If you have any more questions, come to me and I can help you out. So I really need to have some sort of grasp of the collections that we have. So that's what I do. That's what I enjoy the most, is leveraging the collections for research, for exhibits, for social media. I like getting the collections out there. There are people in the back end that process collections who actually go through the collection and physically and intellectually put it together in a way that makes sense. Students now are looking for big data sets. We have big data sets. They're all just analog. They're not scanned. How do we do that? That kind of thing. And then there's digital archivists. Those are people that work with born digital materials or materials that have been scanned in repositories, and I can go in for days about metadata and all that kind of stuff. But that's what I'm moving on to. I'm going to go be a digital archivist at UConn starting tomorrow.
Starting tomorrow. That's
So
an exciting change.
Yes, it is. It's kind of related, but I'm not going to be doing the same exact thing that I'm doing here. People don't understand why archivists and librarians want to get involved in especially research data management. Big data sets. Like, why do archivists care about that? Well, so we're trying to document what you're doing. That's what it comes down to. We're trying to capture a picture of what WPI is like at this point.
Right.
You can't capture.
I understand that.
Yeah, you can't capture everything. So that's why we as archivists need to appraise and say we can capture a representative sample, or go in and kind of say, is this important to you? Why do you have these records? Or why are you doing this? Is this essential? Or is this just something you do on the side that really kind of we don't need to save? So I think that's something that we bring to the table as archivists that people really don't understand until we're there, until we're sitting down with them and saying, hey, have you thought of this? What, asking the questions about why are you doing it this way? Do we need to keep this? How often do you reference this? What kind of program do you use to run your data? Do we need to save that? How is that? How do we do that? So that's a little more digital archivist kind of spin on things.
But there's incredible philosophy
There is.
behind what to save, how to save it, how to organize it,
Yep.
and then how to make it accessible
Yes.
to people that need it.
So that's how I think accessibility. Preservation is access over time. So we want to make sure that we preserve important documents. We want to make sure that they're arranged in a very logical order. There's a lot of theory about provenance. Who has it? How'd you get it? Can you prove that it came from where it came from? You need a lot of documentation. You need to respect the original order of something. So if we were to get a professor's papers and it's just all of his stuff and from his office, and it's in a strange order that we don't understand, but they're his personal papers, we keep it that way. Because there's some sort of context that made sense to him that for someone doing research might make sense to them. So coming in for a professor that's an engineer or chemical biology or something like that, and they bring things in, might not make any sense to me, but I have to respect that order because they know better than I do. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and we can have conversations for hours about certain workflows, certain intellectual decisions, how do you house things.
Especially when we get into the digital realm.
Yes.
Where people are accessing these databases online of what we have, and then we have to organize the physical collection in our space.
Yeah, we do. And that's why a lot of people have a problem with if it's not intellectually and physically the same. So for example, if all the boxes don't run 1 through 10, because for some reason box 10 can be over there because it's a weird size, some people have problems with that. So you really have to divorce the actual, what is this thing intellectually versus what is it physically. So you can always manipulate both independently, but as long as you can find the items and it makes sense, that's all that really matters.
In my time here, I've learned that it takes a lot of effort to properly document a collection and manage it correctly and in a way that makes it easily accessible. And we have a balance between wanting to document every single file or every single folder and the time it takes to do that. And then on top of that, choosing what to put online to say what we have, and then what to put online as an actual scan, going one step further.
Yep. So that's you're hitting on something that's called more product, less process. This is something that's been around in the archival field for a while, and still is kind of rankles some people the wrong way and some feathers, because there's a tension there. So for physically processing, how deep do we go? Do we want to know every item that's in every folder? I say no, because that takes a lot of time. By the time you're through 5 or 10 folders, you could have done 5 or 10 boxes. So I can pull out a folder. I can tell you this is about the centennial celebration, and this is about the opening of the library. I don't know exactly what's in it, but it's a really good start. The problem that you run into is when you go to digitize something, you need to process it on an item level. You need to go down to the page, not just the item, but the page of the item. But but that's just what you have to do. So we don't just scan things and say, here they are. We have metadata behind them. We use Dublin Core metadata, which is a standard. Other places will use other things for different objects. It's not as easy as people think. They say, just scan it and put it online. Well, that's a real problem. And it's like, how do you name these things? How do you put them together? What format are you doing it in? Where are they going to go? What's the numbering scheme behind it? All these questions, and if you don't do it right the first time, you're just making extra work for yourself. So that's why we've done some big scale scanning projects recently for outside people and some professors. And it's like, they said, we want it as soon as you have it. And then I said, it's going to take a while because there's all these things. So our students work really well here by following the details, because the naming of every file is very important. Because as they're scanning, I'm compiling into documents, and we capture the master images or TIFFs, which are really huge image files, even of papers. So we can do whatever we want with them. We can migrate them to a new system whenever we get an actual repository, throw them in there, and then from those masters, we make access copies. So it's a pretty involved process to do this kind of stuff.
And we take it collection by collection.
Yep.
So for some collections, we'll digitize everything and go to the item level for documentation. And some collections will go down to the record carton, and a collection may have hundreds of record cartons, and then within that record carton we go down to the folder. So if somebody comes in looking for materials from 1964, we can say, okay, here's the folder of all the press releases from 1964, but we don't know the names of every single file
and that's
in that folder.
And that's fine. That's even better than what we've had before.
Right.
You kind of want to get people to the resources. I think that's fine, having people saying, here's all the press releases from 1964. If it's not in here, I have something else that we can check.
Right.
So I always have 3 or 4 different places to check. And that's really helpful. Even just having one more collection, even semi-processed, has opened up all these new avenues. So it's really important to at least get some folder level of anything.
Because we would love to go to item level
Yes.
with everything and then scan everything.
Yep.
But when you're dealing with millions of items throughout
millions of pages,
vast rooms, it's not always possible with the time you have, and you have to prioritize.
Yeah, that's the thing. That goes back to MPLP. It's kind of like, do we do this perfectly and give a pristine finding aid that took us years to make? It takes someone months to go through one series. Or do we go through a collection at a higher level, because it's so big? If we had a collection that was 1 or 2 boxes and we had an intern or we had time, we go to the item level. That's fine. The marketing collection is the first big collection I've had processed. I've found it usable, and it's like been a quarter done.
Right.
And it's been very helpful to me, and I'm really excited.
We're talking about a very large collection, I believe close to 300 record cartons of material from the WPI Marketing and Communications Department. This was material that was donated to WPI CPA, and we have been working on gaining intellectual control over what we have in that collection.
Yep.
And then after we have intellectual control, WPI CPA can then tell everybody else what we have in our collection, and then other people can use the materials that we have.
We had a student group come in to work in an IQP about the Washington Project Center. So like, it's an IQP about IQPs. It's very meta. It's kind of, I made that joke and no one got it. But they came in looking for one specific document. It's called Insights, which is something that lists all of the IQPs for a given year. And there's a whole bunch of them from the first years to maybe the 90s. And I said, what are you guys doing? So we're here for the Washington Project Center. I said, oh, we have all these files in the marketing collection that we just found out about, and we have all these files in the subject files. So gave them a bigger picture, and there was a memo in there about the founding of the center and letters back and forth between the big players about it. So it's kind of even just with knowing that it was somewhere in a W box, because we haven't gotten that far in the inventory yet, and I had just accidentally seen it, makes that research experience for the students that much richer. And it's great to see, because they're finding what they're looking for, and that's what we aim for.
And WPI CPA frequently gets donations from departments on campus and students, and of course alumni and the families of alumni. So take us through what happens when someone comes in with materials for donation.
Sure, we usually get people coming in with either their old yearbooks, or some family members will say, I was cleaning out my dad's attic and we found all this stuff. So what they do is they send it to us. We usually have a conversation beforehand, either by email or they come in and say, are you interested in this kind of stuff? Because we don't take everything. We'll take things that are WPI related or related to, we have a great Charles Dickens collection, Worcester Industry collection.
The great Charles Dickens collection.
It's all over. So we have a conversation, and say, is this appropriate for us to house? Because we don't have unlimited space. And also we have a collection policy on what we collect, because we don't want to be all over the place. We want someone to come here to study, WPI and the certain collections that we have. So we'll have a conversation, and then they'll send us the items or bring them in. We'll accession them. That means we give them a number, so we can find them until they're processed. Because what should happen is when you get a collection, you give it a accession number, and then when you're processing, say someone brings us yearbooks, and we're working on the university publications collection, which is what we have, we'll say this collection is made up of all of these numbers of accessions, so it can be linked back, like people who gave stuff. We can say, oh, now it's part of this collection, and then we house them in archival boxes until they're ready to be processed, and then we send out a deed of gift saying, like, yes, we've received this. You give us the permission to use it in our collections, and if you have the copyright, you hand it over to us. We have all the founding documents for the school, including the donation of land, the first charter. I just found recently the name change. It used to be the Worcester County Free Institute of Industrial Science. Changed its name in July of 1888, and I just found that act of Massachusetts legislature because somebody in one of the offices needed to know about it. So we have all that stuff. We document all the history. We have plans of all the buildings.
Even plans for buildings that were going to be built,
yes,
but then didn't win out over the buildings that were actually built.
We have alternate plans for Boynton Hall. We have plans for another library that could have been. There's supposed to be a humanities building built on campus right where I think Fuller Labs is. That never got built. Don't know why. There's an IQP about that, which is really cool. They did a lot of research into that. And they made a website about it and exhibits. So we have some really involved students who really were interested in that part of the history. But every day I learn something new about the history.
Right. I think it's incredible to be able to find the photographs that we have and then even 100 years old and then place them in the real current scene and see how the changes have been made, new buildings that have been built.
It's really cool. It's also really cool to find out about a story or an incident, and then you see it in the rest of the collections when you go look, like you know what you're looking for. And that's what I like, the synergy of all the collections and telling a story. That's the other part that I really like. Be able to tell stories about what's going on, what WPI was like, and kind of give people context for, this is, you go here now, this is how it happened. All these things led up to you being here and led up to the curriculum that you're taking now, and how important that is. And that even though the IQP and MQP are very revolutionary and important, if you look back at the old theses, they were doing some of the same things. Right. But it was just thought of in a different way. They were looking at practical problems. There's been a real, strong vein of practical application of education in WPI that you can only see, if you take like a historical perspective. It didn't start with the plan. The plan was revolutionary and it's great, but it's always kind of been there since the beginning, which I find is fascinating. A lot of people are fascinated by and don't expect to find out.
And the WPI plan refers to the current system where we have 4 terms per year, 7-week classes each term, and then we have the junior year interactive qualifying project, which is usually humanities-based, and then the senior year MQP master's qualifying major qualifying project, which is somebody's senior project in their field of study. And then from that system grew all of the off-campus project centers around the world, and the WPI plan was implemented in the early 70s. So we have had it here for a long time, but WPI also has a lot of history before that current plan. And I think, having spent so much time in the archives, I think it's very important for students to understand all that had to happen for us to get to right now. And because we have so many engineers and technologists here, of course we appreciate the progression of technology, and we see that, and we see what we have access to now, and how good our lives are compared to people even just 100, even just 200 years ago.
Yeah.
The incredible change.
Different.
But also everything that had to happen at a single institution to build everything that we see every day.
Yeah, and
I think that's very special.
And it's really interesting working at a STEM institution as an archivist, because instead of having a history department and an English department, there's a humanities department with a certain number of history professors.
Right.
So it's been interesting to try to, of course we work in the humanities department a lot, but try to get into engineering classes, try to get into, bio classes, and try to get into architecture classes, that kind of thing. It's been really interesting, kind of makes you think of the collections in ways you normally wouldn't. And it's great that, every 7 weeks it's always a different class, and we usually get some kids in from history classes or IQPs.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and I really appreciate you sitting down today. If students want to come in and learn more about what we do and what we have in the archives, how can they find us?
So you can go to the Gordon Library website. We have a link on there. Our website's still being built right now, but we're open Monday through Thursdays 1 to 5, where you can just come on into the reading room. This room right here. We're on level G of the Gordon Library. So when you come into the library, take the elevator down to G.
Just keep going down.
Going down. Take a left out of the stairs, and you can come through. There's some glass doors out there with our name up top. You can come through those. A lot of people think you can't come in, but definitely come in. We have a gallery. We have an exhibit up on the 50th anniversary of Gordon Library, which is in October. Come into the reading room. You can make an appointment down here. There will be a link on our website where you can make your own appointments. We're open for that 10 to 4, I believe, during the week. But you can just drop on in 1 to 5, Monday through Thursday, to just come and see, check out the collections, talk to an archivist. It's a cool place.
Definitely is.
Yeah.
Mike, I appreciate you coming by today, so thank you very much.
No, thanks, James.
Appreciate you taking the time.
No problem.
The first is a talk by a CEO who's coming to campus to talk about his tech business and how he runs it. The second is a seminar on sustainability and how it relates to zero energy buildings. And the last is a networking event with a legal panel with legal advice relevant to entrepreneurs. And all of these events are on campus, which is good because all of them overlap, which is something that happens in my schedule more often than I would like. But it's better than the alternative. And I feel like I go to a million of these events every year, but each one gives a little bit of knowledge and each one is a chance to meet somebody new. So building myself and building a network, and the way to do that is to actually show up.
Once said, if your roommate wants to kill you, you need your own apartment, right? And in the cloud, that's really where we're at, right? Think about the strategies as a hacker that I would use to get to your data. If I see that there's a multi-tenant gateway, a shared gateway in the cloud, I'm going to sign up for that service to figure out how I can tap into your data.
great people, great knowledge, and a great day.